Sorry, this is part of our demo today for our live webinar, so we don't get cut off. So hi guys, how you doing? Thanks for watching today, and thanks for tuning in and giving us your time. My name is Josh Clements, and I'm a video content specialist here at BoxCast, and I work in everything from live video to post-produced video to filmmaking and the whole gamut of video production.
Yeah, and my name is Wade Clark, and I'm the media director at Bomo Media, but I also work here at BoxCast in technical support. So if you're ever calling in or chatting in, you might get me on the phone, and I get the pleasure of talking to you.
Yeah. So we'll switch over to our PowerPoint presentation now, so you don't have to look at us full screen anymore. And let's go ahead and hop into it. So like I said, let me move this over just a little bit, sorry about that. So we introduced ourselves, obviously, and one thing I want to get started with is the fact that Wade and I we own a video production company together that we started 4 years ago. When we got started initially, we really had no idea what we were doing, and we had no idea what to buy. And that's where a lot of the inspiration for this webinar came along, was us trying to go back to our old selves and help our old selves with, how much money should we spend getting started, and what are some easier, more cost-effective ways to do live video in a high quality way at the same time. So I'm sure you know, if you're getting started with video and if you're a beginner, how expensive all this stuff can be. Cameras are the prices of new or used cars. Cabling is the price of your cell phone, and it's just overwhelming at times. So if you're newer to streaming, it can be hard to know which equipment is worth it. But our goal today is to show you some equipment that you can get for a very cost-effective price. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to compare really nice pieces of equipment that Wade and I use to some stuff that you might be able to buy at a beginner level and go from there.
That's also super nice.
That's also super nice.
We're actually using...
And we'll give you similar results, especially to the blind eye, similar results, and still give you a professional quality stream. And then we're going to educate you on why some things are more expensive than other things, and what you're actually paying for when you pay for the $5,000 camera versus the $300 camera. So that's really important to note too. So we'll start with cameras. We're just going to do the basics today. We're going to give you 2 examples of cameras, 2 examples of switchers, 2 examples of tripods, and 2 examples of encoders. And just let me reiterate, the format of this is going to be, we're going to show you something really professional, and we're going to explain why we love it at a professional level, but then we're going to give you a better, way more cost-effective option for if you're a person getting started in live video.
So alrighty, let's jump into it. Let's just start talking with cameras, kind of the main piece of equipment you need for live streaming or recording an event. So the first one, as Josh mentioned, we're going to go into more of a pro level, things we've used actually, and to note, everything that we've talked about in this presentation, we have personally used. So we have real life experience with it. But to start with this camera, it's the Panasonic camera. You can see the price point is $4,200. So pretty pricey, especially if you're just getting started with video production. But why, you may be asking, why is it $4,200? Well, it's got a beautiful Leica lens. It also has great zoom on it. Really, really great in low light, we would say.
Yeah, it's a rock star in low light.
Yeah, it has all the professional inputs that you would need for video production, like SDI, XLR, and if you don't know what SDI and XLR are, simply SDI is similar to HDMI, but you can send it over longer distances and at faster speeds. And then XLR is more professional audio inputs, essentially.
Yeah. So anytime you get to a professional level of inputs and outputs with video equipment, you're going to end up spending over $1,000, no matter what it is basically that you're buying, unless it's like a converter. But if it's a camera or a switcher, that's where you'll start to see you're getting $1,500, $2,000, $2,500 and above, because just simply, in some ways, because the market determines it professional. And I don't know, it might be a hoax, but it's not very expensive to make those connectors, but that's what makes them more expensive.
Right.
So oftentimes that can be the difference between a $3,000 camera and a $900 camera.
Right, and also this camera does do 4K, which is kind of a hot topic in video streaming and in the video world right now, so that's always nice. And as dual codec recording, and by that simply we mean you can record to 2 SD cards at the same time. It also has a ton of manual settings and stuff that you can actually kind of see roughly right over here. You can do a lot of custom stuff with this camera that for a beginner, it's not really something that's pull out of the box and you're ready to go.
Yeah, and you also, obviously, you pay for that sweet red plate on the side there to make you look even cooler.
$2,000 worth of cost.
Yeah. But in the video production world, I think it's really interesting because simple, easy to use products are always cheaper, and you're paying always more for customization and the ability to change your own manual settings and to have more options. And that's one thing to note is, yes, the lenses are definitely more expensive, and the lenses are made better so you can shoot higher quality video, but it's also just the ability to customize and have a lot of different inputs and outputs, and change your audio settings, and change your manual settings on a camera and stuff like that.
Right, so let's actually get into a camera that we would recommend if you're just starting out with your live streaming or your production setup, and it's the Canon Vixia HF G20. We actually are using it today, so it is the camera that is set up, and what you're seeing in this picture-in-picture is the quality that you're going to get with a live stream.
Can I tell a story about this camera?
Absolutely. Go for
So
it.
this is the first camera that Wade and I have actually ever purchased when we were starting out in video production, and that was 4 years ago, and it was a $1,200 camera then, and it still held its value. It's still an awesome looking camera. It does great in low light, and when we bought it, it did a great job. We've moved on to new things now, but we still use it in our arsenal. If we're ever still doing a live video event, or if we're ever doing a multi-cam event, we still use it as a backup wide shot going into the back of our switcher. So it's durable and it lasts, and it's been a good 4 years with it.
Right,
I would say.
and I mean, you can just see some of the bullet points right there, and also the price point. I mean, it's $600 now compared to that other camera we just showed you, which was $4,200.
Yeah.
So it's got great zoom, does awesome in low light. We have no additional lighting here for our webinar, just the kind of overhead lights above. And as Josh was mentioning, great starter camera that scales with your equipment. I mean, we've had it for 4 years, and we still almost use it. I'm not going to say every time, but we were using that $4,200 Panasonic camera, and we were using this camera on the same multi-cam shoot. We just had this camera in the back with a wide shot. So as you can see, you can kind of just take it with you and use it always as something.
The thing has definitely held its value. You can see it has a flip-out LCD that flips towards you, which is really nice too, in case you ever live stream events in selfie mode, or you need to view your own shot and you're a one-man show. So it's a really good camera for that as well. I'm trying to think of anything else. The only frustration I could see you really getting into with this camera is you see at the bottom bullet point, it has a mini HDMI input and output. The frustrating thing about that is if you're in an unsecure environment, or you're in an outdoor environment, or where a lot of people are moving, those connectors are really tiny. And they get a little flaky, and they start to, like, the signal goes in and out a little bit. So if you're in like a high traffic area, this is probably not a camera to use for that particular use case, especially going into an encoder or switcher. Okay. Speaking of switchers, we'll now talk about switchers. This is a fun topic because the range of prices on switchers is all over the place, but today we'd like to show you some more affordable options. So we'll start with what Wade and I use right now, which is the Blackmagic ATEM 1ME. This is about $2,300 and some change, and I want to explain just really quickly why you pay for that. Well, you pay for, again, the SDI inputs, the professional XLR inputs as well. And not only that, but when you're paying for a Blackmagic product, it's like buying an Apple product in the video production world. They're just really well made, they're high quality, the materials they use in them, I mean, when you buy these things, they just feel really sturdy. But there's another thing that you pay for as well too, and that's the ability to rack mount it. So if you can see these two lips on the side, on the left and right of the product, that allows you to put it in like a gator case or some rack mounted system, or maybe like a huge video rack if you're in like a large church. So that's another thing that kind of goes with it. And then just like the camera we recommended before, it takes in 4K video. So you're also increasing your ability to have higher quality video on top of that. So, you know, graphics, lower thirds, titles, logos, a lot of switchers do that, but I would say the actual connectors and the rack mountability and the 4K video is what makes this thing so expensive.
And you can, I mean, this one has 10 SDI inputs.
Yeah.
You could do 10 cameras if you really wanted to.
If you wanted your stream to look like an NBA game and you needed 10 cameras, you can go for it. And that's a great thing. But here's what we'll recommend today. and that's what we're actually using. You can see I've actually got it on the table here, the Roland V1 HD. We use it for our monthly webinars when it's just a small little environment like this and we don't need anything too crazy. It's an awesome plug-and-play switcher at a great price. I would say if you're new to live video switching, you've never switched before, this is a great starter switcher. If you're a one-man show, if you're on a small team, this is also another great option because it's just plug-and-play usability. You can see it's more tabletop, it doesn't rack mount. You can fit, you can palm the thing. It's smaller than the laptop, so it's just super portable. It's got 4 HDMI inputs, which is great, 4 camera shoot. You don't get that SDI capability, so if you need to send signals a long distance, it might not be the best option. But it gives you the HDMI preview and program outputs, which is really cool. You can control it manually just by clicking the buttons on here. And then let me switch to a third view actually right now. I'll turn the pip off, just to give you an idea of kind of how this thing looks from this view. So you can do quite a bit of different things. You can control it through a PC or an iPad. There's a USB port on the back, which allows you to control it, or you can just control it on here by clicking all these different buttons. There's some cool effects, like I said, there's a picture-in-picture effect. You can program buttons to do different effects. You can do green screening, you can do logo overlays, kind of everything that you would want. So if you would just click this little A button, that would bring us back to our picture-in-picture. We can release it just as simple as that. There's a nice little fader bar, so you can do some transitions. Wow, look at that, how crazy.
That is looking cool.
I hope nobody uses those in their live events, but you never know. So there's a transition button there. You can do some fades. You can do fade to whites, right there. A little fade to black right there. And then not only that, but the other sweet thing on the back of this, I can't really see it here, but there's RCA inputs and outputs. This actually has a 12-channel audio mixer in it too, which is awesome because not only do you need to do video switching, but sometimes you may need to adjust your audio levels too. Now you don't have to go out and buy a hardware mixer for audio separately. So the reason we love it, it's pretty simple, but it's super easy to use.
So yeah, I would say the biggest difference between the two is you can control everything on the Roland without a computer, but with that ATEM, you definitely probably need a computer hooked up to it. So it's a whole other piece of equipment that you have to dedicate to just switching for that Blackmagic product. But with this, you can just do it all right there.
Yeah.
So.
And we'll move on from that, but if you have any other questions, we'll be happy to talk about what the Roland can do specifically.
Absolutely. So let's talk about tripods, something that some people might get some sticker shock on if they're looking at more expensive tripods. I know we did when we started out, but to go with that first kind of pro-level tripod, you can see the price point is $800, and you might go, I never could imagine spending $800 on a tripod about 4 years ago.
I know. My first car cost $800, so it's kind of hard to imagine just a thing with 3 sticks and a pan bar on it.
Right, but so you're asking why, essentially, would it cost $800? And really what you're paying for is you're paying for the counterbalance system of leveling shots, and you're paying for a better fluid head tripod system. Essentially what that means is there's like a fluid ball in the head of the tripod right here, which lets you pan and tilt super smooth, and you can actually control those settings with knobs where you can adjust how fast, how slow you want. Yeah. And essentially it's like having manual settings on a tripod. But we did use this tripod at an event about 2 weeks ago, and all the shots the guy took with it, like the guy that was controlling the tripod and the camera, looked awesome. When he had to pan, tilt, he was following people up on stage with it. And it was really smooth.
Why don't we tell them what they're really paying for?
Okay, what you're actually paying for.
Why don't we tell them what really matters
Yeah,
there?
so in Josh's mind, what really matters is the illuminated bubble level, which essentially is just a light that lets you, turns on and shows you that your tripod's level. It's kind of an inside joke between us, but it does have that, which actually is nice.
If you're in a dark environment and you need to level your shot, there's a little light that you can turn on the tripod.
Yeah, so
that's what you're really paying for.
Yeah, but other things like this is it goes up pretty high height. It goes about 5'6", 5'7", so it can shoot over a general crowd of people or people sitting down. You can switch between those spiked and rubbered feet. You can also, another thing you're paying for when you get more expensive tripods is the load capacity. So essentially, heavier cameras, yeah. So when you get bigger cameras with more expensive rigs and you're going to put maybe a monitor on it and a light, you're going to need a tripod that can handle that. Like that Panasonic camera fits perfectly on this tripod. But if you were to put that Panasonic huge camera on a $50 tripod, it would probably crush the tripod and be too heavy for it. And simply, it's
Yeah.
overall.
So I would almost say if you are new to this and you see yourself scaling really big over time, maybe investing in a good tripod's not a bad idea if you think that your cameras are going to get bigger and heavier and stuff like that. But I also want to, let me just explain one more thing. When Wade says a true fluid head tripod system, what he means is there's actually like a ball bearing in the top of the head that is kind of like greased up and it has like some like fluid in it. The tripod actually swivels through. So that's like a true fluid head. There's actually fluid in the tripod that lets it move smoothly. Whereas the other ones that we're going to recommend today, they're not a true fluid head, but they mimic the feeling of a fluid head tripod.
Right, so let's talk about best bang for your buck tripod here, the Magnus VT3000, which we
Another
actually...
legend.
Yeah, which we actually bought 2 of when we started out, and they've been, once again, rock solid tripods for us. We still use them to this day. Like we were mentioning, that jet shoot we did where we were using the Canon Vixia and we were using the Panasonic. We had a Manfrotto tripod with the Panasonic on it, but we had our Canon Vixia on this guy and just had it in the back, recording, and it does an awesome job. And like Josh mentioned, it does do a pretty good job of panning and tilting up and down, but it's not going to be super smooth.
It's gonna be a little jerky.
Yeah, so if you do plan on moving a lot, maybe if you're going to do action sports or your pastor or whoever you're presenting or trying to record moves around a bunch, you might want to try looking into something with a little bit more fluid head, but this will do an awesome job if you're just going to have it stay straight on with something and shoot that way. It does have also those spiked and rubbered feet, which if you don't know exactly what that is, it's basically just down here. You can adjust those for like indoor or outdoor settings. So let's say you're going outside and shooting in a field or on a football field, put the spiked feet in so it's locked in there. And then also if let's say you gotta go back indoors now, you can switch it to the rubbered feet so it doesn't slide around.
Yeah.
And one thing we forgot to mention that both tripods have, and I think you should really get.
It's always good for live events.
Always good for live events is this mid-level spreader. You're gonna definitely wanna have something like this. It just makes the tripod more sturdy. And we have
Keeps the legs evenly spread out so you can't actually incorrectly or unevenly spread them.
Right, and we have another tripod that doesn't have this, and we'll find ourselves when it's on a slippery surface, it will start doing this on us.
Yeah.
It will start kind of just blowing out, which you don't want to walk away from your camera and all of a sudden have it be on the ground.
Yeah, right.
So once again, this is probably your best bang for your buck in the tripod world, in my opinion.
Yeah. And last but not least, it wouldn't be a BoxCast webinar if we didn't talk about encoders. Here at BoxCast, we're professionals when it comes to encoders, and we love and we study them. So I'm actually going to shamelessly pitch a couple of our products here today. I hope you don't mind. But I will promise you I'm not in sales, so here's my best shot. So we'll start with our BoxCaster Pro. So like we've said with every other product we recommended today, why is this more expensive? Well, again, inputs, pass-throughs, XLR inputs, and SDI inputs. Not only does this have just standard SDI inputs, it has what's known as 12G SDI, which is the optimal input or signal receiver for 4K video. But not only are we doing that, but we're also using HEVC compression, which is just a really high efficiency video compression method. And then we do 4K, we're allowed to accept 4K video at 60 frames per second. So that's just like, it's actually pretty sweet.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And then not only that, but if you go in terms of functionality, we give you the ability to have a 4.3-inch touchscreen for confidence monitoring right there, so you can see the status of your stream, and you can see what's going on, and you can actually watch what video is being fed into it. So there's a mini monitor on there, so you can watch your video. There's a ton of other things that this thing comes with. We call it like a Swiss Army knife for video streaming, but that's kind of the gist of it. I would say if you're on a professional video team, or if your job is video streaming or broadcasting and you're specifically in that field, then you want to go with an encoder like this because you want those professional inputs. You want the ability to monitor the status of your stream and stuff like that. But what we'll go to next, on the cheaper side, is the BoxCaster Pro. And I'll actually show you a little shot here. Turn the picture off. So there's the BoxCaster Pro. You can see the size of it right
Normal
there.
BoxCaster.
Or yeah, there's the normal BoxCaster. You can see the size of it. It's pretty tiny. It's pretty easy to use. We have we make it plug and play purposefully, so there's less like customization with it. The beauty of that is if you are a one-man show or your only job isn't video streaming, you've got a ton of other stuff going on, all you gotta do is plug it in, schedule your events, and let it go live on its own. We have 3 status indicator lights here, so we have an internet icon to see that you're online, we have an arrow icon so you know that you're streaming, and we have a camera icon that will go green or red depending on whether there's a valid video signal. And what that's designed to do is it's designed for the average streamer to be able to see the status of their stream without having to hop on a computer or monitor it from their phone or anything like that. So we'll go back here. So that's another thing that's really great about it. With BoxCast, we automatically archive all your video, and we allow you to stream to Facebook Live and YouTube Live, which is really sweet. So obviously we're streaming to YouTube Live today, while we're also streaming to our BoxCast platform as well. So you could simultaneously have people watch it on your Facebook Live page and on your website, which is sweet. It allows you to serve to any size audience, so you can get thousands, hundreds of thousands, as many viewers as you want. And it's, like I said, it's fully automated, plug and play. It's probably the fastest piece of equipment that Wade and I own as far as setting it up.
Absolutely.
It's the most mindless piece of equipment that we own as far as setting it up. And just to be a little anecdotal, I'll mention that probably 2 months ago we did a church conference with thousands and thousands of viewers. There was several $1 million of rental equipment that was invested into this project for cameras, a truck, a mixer, a staff, stuff like that. All of that equipment was all sending one video feed into our BoxCaster, and thousands of people watch it online, and it's just kind of funny because the power of that $500 encoder compared to the cost of all the rest of the equipment that was used to produce that event is just kind of, it seems a little lopsided, but the quality was awesome. It was a 1080p stream at 30 frames per second, and the thing was rock solid, and people were raving about the quality of it. So sometimes the simplest things in your bag of tricks are sometimes the most powerful.
Absolutely.
Is the lesson or the takeaway I would get from that.
And the one thing I'll add on to it too, when Josh says it's fully automated, essentially how our system is set up is you can schedule an event to start. Well, let's use today as an example. We scheduled the event to start at 11:55 our time. We don't have to click start broadcast. We don't have to do anything. As long as everything's plugged in, this will just go live with
Right,
or without us
right.
really. So that's always nice when you're a smaller crew
Yeah.
of people and you have a ton of hats there.
So we'll hit you with a quick summary, and then we'll go ahead and take questions.
So this is kind of all the pieces of equipment we've recommended to you, kind of our best bang for your buck kit, if we had to put it that way. And as you can see, we've got the Canon Vixie on there, we got the Roland on there, tripod, and the BoxCaster. If you got all those things today, it'd be about $2,300. The one thing is too, I would say if you're maybe not ready to do multicam and you don't think you need this guy, that's the highest price point there. So if you're like, I'm just getting started, I just want to do a camera, a tripod, and a BoxCaster, then take off $1,000 from that, and about $1,300 later, you could be up and streaming essentially by next week. As soon as we can get you a box and you can get the camera and stuff in. So.
And to review all the professional equipment we gave you today, that would cost you about $8,355, and all of the cheaper level stuff would be $2,300. So it's a fourth of the cost, while getting pretty similar high HD quality. What was I going to show you too? Oh, I wanted to, in case you want to get an idea of how the Canon Vixia looks, this is a full screen of us with the Canon Vixia. We have no additional lighting, it's all natural lighting, and you can kind of see how crisp the image is without any supplement to it. The other nice thing about this camera is if you're new to video, you've never done it before, the camera does shoot in auto, but it also has a manual setting on it too. So for $600, you can start playing with manual settings on the camera and learning how to adjust white balance, learning how to adjust exposure, learning how to adjust the iris and things like that.
But it's really, you could just take it out of the box and you're ready to go.
So it gets you, it's a nice camera that could take you to the next level.
So I think we're going to do some questions now.
I think we're going to hit up some questions.
Alrighty. Let's see here. Here, I'll do this one first. It's from David. It says, can you recommend a DSLR camera We'll start with that one. And the other part of the question is, does the Roland have XLR connector for audio? So,
Yeah.
can you recommend a DSLR camera? I work, like I said, at BoxCast in technical support, and I truly think that DSLR cameras aren't necessarily built to live stream, and a lot of them don't send what we call a clean HDMI signal. So they might have an HDMI connector, but when you send that out to the box, or you send it out even to a monitor, you'll notice that it's cropped, it's got icons all over the screen. So really, I would try to stay away from the DSLR world for live streaming.
I'll give you one recommendation if you want to be dangerous.
Yeah.
Look at the Panasonic GH5.
Oh, that's true though.
It does have a clean HDMI, full-size HDMI output on it. Panasonic GH5, it shoots 4K video at 60 frames per second. The thing actually does look unreal. It's pretty cinematic. It's not great in low light, we found. It's
Yes.
okay in low light, so if you're in a low light situation, I'd go more with a Sony camera or a Canon camera. But it's a great price it's good because if you're interested in going into 4K recording or live streaming, it could be a good camera. It does send audio embedded over HDMI, but that's, like Wade said, they're just not built as true camcorders, so if you're doing really long events, if you're doing like an hour-long live stream, you'll probably be okay.
Right.
But if you're doing like a 4-hour graduation or anything like that, the camera might overheat. There's like a lot of different things that go on. The battery life's not designed for it to record for that long of a time.
Right.
So that's why we stay away from it professionally. Now it is a nice hybrid because you can kind of combo between cool cinematic shots and recording, full-length events. But I would try looking at the GH5 before anything else.
Yeah, if you're going to do DSLR.
Yes.
So, and the other question here, does the Roland have an XLR connector for audio? It does not. Not this version in particular, but let's say you're using your soundboard or something and you only have an XLR out. Generally, you can get a cable. Well, you definitely can get a cable that's XLR out to RCA, and you can just plug right back in here to the Roland. So
XLR
there's
RCA converter.
Right. So there's workarounds for that.
I'll go to the next question from Loyola. Sorry. Is there even a point to live stream in 4K with the amount of bandwidth it would take up? So yes, there is a point, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's at like a mass level of adoption yet. Mostly because networks still need to kind of find better ways of transferring data and stuff like that. But the ability to capture in 4K is invaluable. And so the ability to capture and live stream in 4K because you have an archived 4K event that you can go back in post-production and you can zoom in on different parts. Because picture with 4K, you have my hands are doing a weird thing. You have 4 1080 images within one frame. So the ability to capture that is really valuable as well. I would say, and she makes a really good point, is if you're streaming in 4K and most of your viewers are watching on a phone or even a laptop, it's barely noticeable. If you were to have a mass event, like a huge, large audience, all watching in the same room at another location, that actually would be a really noticeable difference between 4K and 1080, and that's where you would get a really good viewer experience. You make a good point. It's not 100% there, but it's getting close.
It's getting pretty close. And I would actually, if you're interested in doing anything 4K, definitely sign up for the updates on the BoxCaster Pro, just because we'll keep you updated on what's going on in that world.
And then the second part of your question is, I noticed you mentioned that you're on a Wi-Fi hotspot. Is 720p enough? Absolutely. 720p is going to be a great quality. I mean, Facebook, any videos you watch on Facebook, actually they max out at 720p. They won't even give you a 1080p stream. And anything you see on your phone full screen, you can't tell the difference between 720p and 1080. I can because I stare at a screen all day and I've been doing it for so long that I'm picky about that stuff, but most of your viewers won't actually be able to consciously know the difference between the two. So going back to that blind eye thing, you can kind of play off of that and be like, all right, well, does anyone even know except me? And if they don't, then you might be okay without it.
So this is from Tim Kitchen. Can you commit on motion tracking cameras? That's an interesting question. I'm assuming by motion tracking cameras you mean those like pan, tilt, zoom cameras that you can use with a controller. I would look into, if I was you, the PTZ Optics brand. They're a little pricey, but I've generally seen that those are the ones where you can send an actual clean HDMI feed back to a BoxCast or back to even a video switcher to do that. I know a lot of the security-like cameras don't actually have like a correct video feed. So I'd be a little careful if you're looking into like the pan tilt zoom cameras.
But I'd look at PTZ optics.
I would look at PTZ optics though, to be honest, and just see what they have to offer. That's kind of the go-to.
Yeah.
For me. So,
We have another question. What's the difference between SDI and HDMI? It's a great question, and I'll try to simplify it as much as I can. SDI connections are typically run along what's called a BNC cable with a BNC connector, so they lock in, so you can't just rip the cable out of your camera. You can actually unlock it and then pull it out, so for live events that's really crucial, and it's really nice so somebody doesn't just walk along and just kick out your signal. The other difference is SDI signals can run up to about 300 feet before they need to be re-amplified, whereas HDMI signals will degrade after about, I'd say, 50 feet. They can run up to 50 feet. Wade and I have used 50 feet HDMI cables and they're fine, but after 50 feet you can start to get signal loss and stuff like that. And then HDMI, I'm sure you've all used HDMI cables. They plug right in so they can be pulled out really easily.
Right. Are you gonna share these questions with me?
Yeah, sorry. Let me go back to, let me start from there. Element Church, how do you mix audio? How do you integrate audio that doesn't come from the built-in mic? Audio mixing can usually be done from a separate mixer. On the switcher, if you want to reach out, I can kind of show you like a little demo of how it works, but you just kind of raise and lower different levels from there. And integrating audio that doesn't come from the built-in mic, it's usually a matter of, I guess I'd have to figure out more about what kind of microphone you're using, whether it's a lav mic or like stage microphones or anything like that, but it's a matter of routing all those signals into the back of a mixer and playing with them together. In a church environment, I mean, what would you think? How do you integrate audio that doesn't come from the built-in mic?
Generally, when I'm talking to people on the phone and everything, most people
Because you can usually plug the microphone and mount it on the camera, or you can run it into a switcher separately.
Yeah, so I would say a couple ways to approach that. Generally, if there is a soundboard anywhere in that facility, you can usually get like a line out and plug that into your video switcher, or if you just have one camera and a BoxCaster, you know, plug it into the BoxCaster. But generally, if you can get that like mic audio right from someone presenting, that's exactly what you want to do.
I think the most efficient way to answer that question, Element, is if you have just one speaker on a stage, give them a lavalier microphone, and most cameras will have audio inputs that you can input the microphone, receiving end into.
Yeah, or
If you just plug the receiving end of the wireless mic into your camera and mount it on the camera.
right, or if they're already talking over like a big sound system with speakers, there's got to be some kind of soundboard back there.
Right.
That you would assume.
Right.
Okay, I'll answer this one super quick. Does BoxCast work with Wirecast? It does. And if you go to our actually support page where we have our frequently asked questions, you could look at how that integrates if you had a BoxCaster. But we actually have an RTMP solution that you could integrate with Wirecast. But if you had more questions about that, just shoot us an email at questions@boxcast.com.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to give you a little bit more in-depth convo.
Here's my next one. Can the BoxCaster Pro connect to the internet wirelessly? Yes, and we're actually streaming wirelessly today. We don't recommend it though because in an unsecured environment, it's probably going to drop out. Both of them will be able to do wireless streaming. Both of them connect to a Verizon hotspot or any other device.
Yeah.
You could connect it to your iPhone theoretically, but what we hate to see, because we think your viewers are very important and their experience is really important, is we hate to see dropouts and unreliable connections, because you obviously don't want people yelling at you because they can't watch their son's game or their Sunday service because of a wireless connection. So it is possible if you're in a remote location, and we can make specific recommendations to optimize that as best as you can. I mean, Wade and I have used it. I found some success with it, but the problem is it's so unpredictable because you don't know how many people are going to be using their cell phones that day in a wireless area, or you don't know what the circumstances of the wireless network are.
Yeah.
If you're going to go that route, best option is to get a Verizon hotspot and pay for a data plan, because usually when you pay the cellular companies for data, like specifically, and you're not on like a block subscription, they're going to give you some priority. I have been in venues where the wireless connection or using a wireless hotspot worked better than the wired connection, just because I was paying for that data as I was using it, versus using whatever internet plan the venue was on. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah. Okay, so I think this is a good one that maybe we could go to. What are your thoughts on hardware versus software encoders?
My thoughts specifically, because we've used software encoders, the way they encode video isn't really, I'm not technical enough to explain this, but the way they encode video is a little cheaper, and it's not specialized for video streaming specifically. So we've used OBS to try to stream to YouTube Live before, and we've had all kinds of issues with it. We've seen all kinds of dropouts and picture quality issues and stuff like that because it encodes in a format called X264 or X265 and not H265. It's got its own special way of doing it. I always think as a video producer, hardware's better because you're buying a specialized device that specifically performs that one job. If you think about it, a computer's job is to, have Microsoft Word documents on it, send emails, be able to play games, load programs, surf the web, and be able to video stream. And so your computer's like a huge multitasker. So it's more prone to failure because it's got a lot of different jobs it's trying to do. Whereas, an encoder, a hardware encoder, it has one job. It only has to do one thing, and it can't screw it up, so there's more priority on the stream there. So depending on, the urgency of your stream or how much you prioritize the stream, I would say buy a specialized device, buy a hardware encoder.
Yeah, my big thing is like you got your encoder, which obviously is a little bit, it's another piece of equipment, but usually you're using your computer for something else, so now you're like, now you're just like hogging up a computer during your production just to stream.
Yeah, the only issue I've ever had with software encoders is usually the way they encode and specifically the fact that my computer's multitasking and sometimes there's some issues with the stream because of that.
Right.
But that's just an opinion. I think in any professional environment, you're going to have hardware over software, but obviously this is about live streaming on a budget, so there certainly are some free streaming options, including we have a broadcaster app that you can stream from. Open broadcast software is something you could look into too for streaming directly to other platforms as well.
There you go. That's probably a good one for you.
Okay.
I'll answer this one first. How would you recommend we store/maintain this equipment? Generally, honestly, I'm a sucker for if you can buy a hard case for it and it fits that product, to do that. Buy a hard case, and I kind of might stink lugging them around every once in a while, but it'll keep your equipment safe. Especially with mostly all tripods, you will get a bag for them, so keep them in the bag, keep them, keep them in a nice, normal temperature spot. Don't leave them in your car on a super hot day or super cold day as well. We try never to leave anything electronic in our cars overnight or anything like that. We try to take it up and put it in our room or anything just so it's not subject to the weather. But I would get a hard case for almost everything if you could, or some kind of case.
Yeah, you don't know when you're going to drop that stuff or where you're going to leave it and somebody's going to kick it or move it around. It's not worth breaking because at that point it's that expensive.
Right.
Gator cases are really nice.
Pelican cases.
Pelican is probably the best brand, but you can also buy cheaper options that do the same exact thing. You don't have to buy the premier brand because think about functionality. Does it do the same thing as the cooler brand? Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
So it's probably worth just spending a little less money. But so next question. Russell asks, how does BoxCast integrate with scoreboards? That's an awesome question. We do it in a variety of ways. One, we have a manual scoreboard option, which just gives you the ability to, from our dashboard, and maybe we could pull that up.
Actually, no, I can get.
You can show some. We have a manual scoreboard option that allows you to adjust the scores directly from the BoxCast dashboard, and that's really easy to use because you're just clicking +1, +2, quarter 1, quarter 2, and you can actually do that from your mobile phone too, which is really cool. You can adjust the scores using our BoxCast broadcaster app, and we can just show them these too. We have these wireless or wired scoreboard adapters and wireless scoreboard adapters. So these are just radios that communicate from one BoxCaster to the other.
Yeah, essentially, this will plug into your scoreboard. So let's say this is a scoreboard, plug it in. This plugs into the BoxCaster, and then you can send that signal wirelessly.
Yeah, so it's super easy. David asks, I have Adobe Creative Suite, does it matter to have these options on the camera? I guess I'd have to have a more in-depth conversation with you about that, David. The Adobe Creative Suite, I think what you're asking is like the ability to have overlays and graphics and maybe stuff like that. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
The ability to do graphic work on your camera. I would say that those functionalities, if you're looking to do overlays or graphics, might actually be better on the switcher itself and not within the camera. There are some cameras you can buy that do graphic overlays, like within the video feed, and then they send a video feed out to a live stream with just the lower thirds on them. But we might have to have a more in-depth conversation about that, just so I can kind of look for what you're gauging. Because there's a lot of Adobe programs available out there.
I love how Lena's just feeding these to us, so little Easter eggs.
I know.
So this is just another question. Can I save the stream on a media server, not on Facebook / just YouTube? Actually, we do archiving on BoxCast, so we kind of hit on that a little bit when we were talking about it, but essentially what that means is once you stream an event with us, it will be, depending on what plan you're on, but as long as you're on on one of the plans with archiving, it will go right to our back-end web-based BoxCast dashboard. So that event will be there for you to download, review, also put back on your website or share with anyone that didn't get to see it. Just like this webinar, we'll have it immediately once we're done.
Yeah, you'll be able to watch it right away.
You'll be able to watch it right away.
The nice thing about that is it's simultaneously recording and streaming, so you don't have to wait to upload video to the internet after you
Right,
watch.
and with Facebook and
It's
YouTube,
instantly watchable.
yeah, I believe with Facebook and YouTube too, is once you're done streaming, you have the ability to post that video. So
Yeah.
it's archived there too as well.
Right, right. Okay, David asked, does a TriCaster replace the need for the BoxCaster and a switcher? Theoretically, yes. Yes, it does. And a TriCaster can do a ton of different things. And it's good for if you have somebody that can focus their time and energy just into the TriCaster. It's going to be a really steep learning curve, and it's a really expensive product, so expect some training to happen and some personnel to be dedicated just to the TriCaster, because a TriCaster is a job within itself, outside of shooting on a camera and stuff like that. And it is at a hefty price point, but I think they do a great job for professional sports,
Absolutely.
for professional TV shows and stuff like that. But be prepared to have a steep learning curve,
Right, that's the one
and a lot of
thing-
training to go into that.
Right, the one thing I'll say about the BoxCaster is the learning curve is so short. and
There's
not-
like
and
essentially
not
no
high.
learning curve.
Yeah, we have, I would say if you're like a sports information director at a school,
Yeah.
and you know that the students are just coming in each semester and you're trying
Yeah.
to teach people basically every year how to use it, use something, it doesn't take too much technical knowledge to learn how to use the BoxCaster.
Yeah.
You just gotta plug the camera in, turn the camera on, give it some internet and power it up.
Yeah.
So it's really, really simple
Yeah.
to use. It truly is just plug and play live stream.
Yeah, but TriCasters are sweet, and they do allow you to live stream. The only problem you'll run into that with is you eventually have to pick a place for your stream to go. And the TriCaster usually doesn't, some of them do have streaming services. I don't know if TriCaster has a streaming service in itself, but you have to pick a streaming provider, just like you have a cell phone plan provider. You have to pick a provider to stream to, and then at that point, you might have to make some like financial decisions and stuff like that. The nice thing about the BoxCast platform is it's end-to-end, so you buy the BoxCast hardware and then you can use our streaming platform and stuff like that. You don't have to think about all of these different vendors you need to pick to live stream. It might simplify your life.
So I hope I answered this in the last question. Where does the BoxCast auto archive go? Essentially, and I'll go a little bit more in depth with our dashboard, just briefly. Essentially, we have a web-based dashboard that you don't have to install on your computer or install on your phone. You can access it at any time as long as you have internet connection. And you log into your dashboard, and on the left-hand side, you'll see all the things you can do. You can go to the home page. You can obviously schedule. That's where you schedule all your events, and that's where you manage all your events, where you can see your past events, your current events, upcoming events. And then you can also, from there, get your embed codes to put on your website. We have a resources tab that will show you some tips and tricks and videos on how to use the BoxCaster. Just kind of like a home base for the software side of kind of live streaming.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Loyola has another question. Would you recommend HD SDI or HDMI for a second camera shooting sideline for sports, about 100 feet from the laptop? That's a great question. So there's a couple of different answers I could give you for that one. One is you can actually convert an HDMI signal to an Ethernet signal. And we've done that before, and instead of having to buy an SDI camera, which is obviously at a more expensive price point, if you already have HDMI cameras and you want to convert that HDMI signal over a longer distance and you want to send it longer, you can convert it to Ethernet, Cat 5, Cat 6, and then convert it back to HDMI on the receiving end, and then that's a nice way, because you get about 300 to 400 feet up to that too.
Right. I think it kind of depends on your setup. I mean, if you
already have an SDI camera, then yeah, definitely send an SDI signal
yeah.
for sure. But if you don't have one and you have a pretty good HDMI camera and you're actually happy with the quality, maybe try just converting it at the moment, just converting it to Ethernet.
Right.
And just look up, quick Google search. I can also send you recommendations if you reach out to us. But just look up HDMI to Cat 5 converter, or HDMI to Cat 6 converter, or HDMI to Ethernet converter, and those will do a really awesome job.
So I think.
And
yeah,
then,
I think we've answered.
No, I've got 2 more.
Oh, okay, half for you. You've stolen all the questions from me today.
Here, do you want this one?
Sure. All right. Are there tripods controlled by your device? In parentheses, iPad, iPhone. I don't know. Have you seen tripods that you can control with your
I've never seen a tripod controlled remotely, but there are things called pan tilt zoom cameras, commonly called PTZ cameras. We kind of mentioned that earlier.
Yep.
That from your phone or your device can actually let the camera zoom in, zoom out, pan left and right, and then tilt up and down. So look up PTZ cameras if you're interested in that. They can be a little bit expensive though at that point.
Right.
And then last question, why are some lenses more expensive than others? So this is a very complex and really good question, I would say. The glass, a lot of times what you're paying for is the literal glass that the lens is made of. And the thicker the glass oftentimes, the better of a picture you get, because it's purely capturing that image in a better way. I'm not like a lens scientist, but I know a lot of times it's the quality of the glass you're paying for. You hear that quite often. The other reason some might be more expensive than others is just their ability to zoom and how far they can zoom in. On top of that, last but not least, really expensive lenses, like really high-end TV broadcast lenses, what they can do is they can allow you to zoom in on a subject without you losing aperture. You can zoom in, from very far away on Wade's face, and you could maintain a really high aperture, not lose light, and not lose any of those features that you get when you're pulled all the way out. So I hope I did a good job explaining that, but there's a lot that goes into it. On top of that, usually just branding is a big part of it. Like we said with that Panasonic lens, it's got a Leica lens, L-E-I-C-A, and Leica is just a high-end luxury lens brand.
Right. So if we didn't get to any of your questions today, like I said, feel free to shoot us an email, josh.clemens@boxcast.com or wade.clark@boxcast.com.
And we can answer anything more in depth exactly.
So,
and have a conversation.
Right. All right. Well, thank you guys so much.
Thanks so much for tuning in. Now I need